Good morning.
Good morning. Please come in.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. I was looking for the walk-in interview room for the jobs with Anderson Lee.
That's us. You're in the right place. Please come in. Have a seat.
Oh, good, right. Thank you.
So, you're interested in a position with us. Was it for the accountancy department or sales department?
Accountancy.
Okay, well, first things first. My name's Jane Southwell. And you are?
Richard Arkwright.
Well, pleased to meet you, Richard.
Yes, pleased to meet you too.
Can I just check the spelling of your surname? I think I've got it right. It's Arkwright?
No, actually it's Arkwright.
Oh, yes. Okay, thanks. Well, let's make a start.
Actually, I brought a short summary CV with me, if that helps.
Yes, that may help. Let's have a look at it. Aha. Okay. So, in fact, you studied accountancy at diploma level and you already have some experience working in the accounts department of one of our competitors, John Scott and Partners?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, well, the first question is, how long were you with them exactly?
Let me see. I started in February and left in the end of June. So that's about 5 months. No, I'm sure it was longer than that. Sorry, that's not right. I started in mid-January and left at the end of July. Yes, that's right. So that's six and a half months to be exact.
Okay, and what were you working on mainly during that time?
Well, I was helping several auditors, and mainly it was checking through delivery dates and invoicing dates to make sure they were as they should be.
Okay, and anything else while you were there?
A short spell with one of the bosses. That was more interesting, to be honest. I was asked to help him with the balance sheet entries for one of the larger clients. I better not say which one, of course.
Okay, no problem at all. And that was about it, was it?
I also went out on a few customer visits, again, with the auditors, and that was the best part for me, seeing inside the companies and how the accountancy departments worked. Well, I found that really interesting. I think I could see quite a lot of my diploma studies in practice in the real world.
I see. Interesting. Well, I would like to continue with a few more questions, if I may. Let's talk a little about your studies. Which aspect or aspects of the diploma did you find most interesting?
I think probably the computer-based business modeling.
I see. And why was that so interesting for you?
Well, I just found it quite fascinating, really, being able to input what-if type scenarios and being able to see immediately the impact of their other financial aspects of the business.
Okay, Richard. And what attracted you to Anderson Lee? Why did you decide to come here today?
Well, I noticed in the job advertisement that you have a number of vacancies for trainee auditors. And as I mentioned before, going out into companies and working quite closely with them, that's something I'd really enjoy doing. Also, I think it would give me a very good start in the industry because I know Anderson Lee has a very broad client base. So presumably, I'd be gaining experience in a wide range of organizations.
Okay.
And also,
Yes, please go on.
the fact that your company is quite large, I think means that there will be opportunities for advancement in the future.
Okay, Richard. That's interesting. Can I just ask you about your grades? Final year grades for the diploma.
Yes, of course.
Could you just go through them quickly for me, subject by subject? Please start at the top with accounting theory.
Okay, so accounting theory, B. Basic economics, B. Computer-based business modeling, A. Corporate accounting, A. And financial planning, B.
I see. Very good. Well done.
Thank you.
Well, I can tell you right now, Richard, that we would be very interested in taking this to the second interview, if you would like to do that.
Oh, really? That's great news. I'm a bit shocked. I didn't expect to.
That's okay. So, would you like to go ahead?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay. Well, I'll discuss this one with one of our managers, and I'll get back to you in a couple of days. Is that okay?
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much.
I've got your telephone number. Have I on your CV?
Actually, no, sorry. I think I forgot to put it on there.
No problem. Could you let me have it now?
Of course. It's 0676-201-210.
Okay, so 0676-201-210.
That's it.
Okay, Richard. Very nice to
Hello
meet
again,
you.
everyone.
And I'll give you a call.
So we're now into our 5th session on successful job hunting, and today we're going to look at multiple job offers, what to do, how to handle them, and what the best strategy is. Well, first of all, we have to say this would be a nice problem to have, right? Well, it could be, but what should you do if you receive an offer for a position which is not your first choice? You might like the job, but at the same time prefer another job at a different company. How do you strategically wait it out? Your first option would be to simply refuse the offer and hope with all your heart that your number one choice will end up being successful. This, of course, could be risky. It's kind of like being asked to a college dance by your second choice when you're still hoping to be asked by your dream date. What do you say? How long can you put them off without losing the offer? Handle this poorly and you could end up without any offers at all. No date for the college dance. The first piece of advice I'd like to offer you is don't rush in. Buy time to make a good decision because, as we all know, starting a new job is a major decision and it would be foolish to take it lightly. So, the first step in buying time is to thank the company for their offer, and when you do this, by the way, be excited. Tell them how happy you are to receive such a great offer. Remember, this could be the best offer you get. At this time, it's also perfectly acceptable to tell them you'd like some time to think it over, to make sure you have the right decision. This is something they'll understand and respect. They have no doubt taken their time in making the decision to offer you a position, and they should grant you the same privilege. It's not uncommon to ask for 5 days or a week, although much more, 10 days or 2 weeks, might be asking too much. The other thing to do, which may also buy you time, is to ask them to put the offer in writing, if of course they have yet done so. In many cases, this is going to take a working week to arrive, which gives you 5 or maybe 7 days thinking time. One word of warning here. You should read offer letters carefully. It's not uncommon these days for companies to include a time frame for acceptance of the position offered, so whatever you do, don't miss the deadline. Just one more point before we move on. On receiving an offer over the phone or in writing, if something is not clear, you don't have to just accept it that way. It's perfectly okay to follow up an offer with a question or several questions for that matter. Again, as long as your questions are valid ones, the company can only respect you for wanting things clear. One example where you may need clarification is with respect to the remuneration package. Remember, once you've signed on the dotted line, the opportunity for negotiation has gone. So we've talked about your strategy with your second or third choice offer, but you're still waiting for a call or letter from your first choice company. Is it just a question of waiting, or is there anything you can do? Well, more often than not in life, there are always things we can do, and in this case, like many others, it pays to be proactive. So, the first thing to do with respect to your first choice company is to inform them of the other offer or offers you've received. There are 2 reasons why you should do this. Your first choice company will be pleased that you've brought them up to date with your situation. So, they are now fully aware of your situation and that can help them. It also helps you. The very fact that you have received other offers is something to be proud of and something which also improves your application. The fact that these other companies are offering you a job must mean that they can see the value of what you have to offer. There are probably 3 possible outcomes of doing this. 1, they offer you the job. 2, they tell you they are no longer considering you for the position. 3, they up their offer with an improved benefits and perks. The thing is that applying a little pressure on your first choice will not do any harm, because you need to know where you stand so you can move forward.
Today we're going to look at the pros and cons of taking a year off. You're only a few months away from finishing your courses here, and some of you, if not most of you, are considering this option. But you may all have quite different reasons for considering it, and quite different expectations of it. By the end of the afternoon, then, I hope you'll all go away with a clearer idea of what taking a year off can do for you, what benefits there are to be gained, and also, and this is equally important, what a year off cannot do for you. That is, so to say, it's not going to answer every problem that graduates face on leaving university. So let me make a start. Let me just ask you what you think are the main reasons why people take a year off.
They don't want to find a job.
Yes, that could be a reason.
Or they want to relax for a while after studying.
Okay, yeah, that's another very possible reason. There are in fact many reasons, and many which are, let's say, questionable. And I'd like to address some of the common ones first, along with some of the pitfalls you may want to avoid. Now, many people feel they just want to take time out when they finish, after studying for so long and so hard. Well, this is natural enough. Firstly, I'm not sure you need a full year to do so. And secondly, are you really going to be satisfied with yourself at the end of the year, having done basically nothing?
Sorry, so just chilling out for a year is not really a good idea?
Well, probably not. Chilling out for a couple weeks might be okay, but then after that, I'm sure you'd want to achieve more with your time that you have on this planet. Another common reason people cite for taking a year off is to travel, to see the world. Again, I would offer a word of caution. While few people would argue against the merits of travel, it does of course depend on where you go and what you do when you're there. Drifting from one holiday resort to the next, for example, can prove to be very expensive and unlikely to broaden your mind in the way that some travel experiences can.
So, sorry again, but are you saying travel is not a good idea?
I'm saying you should plan it carefully and try to seek out destinations and experiences which are very different from what you have become used to.
Something new.
That's right, something new. So, moving on, another common reason is that people want to make a difference or give back to society, and of course, these are worthy motives. But here again, I would encourage you to be quite focused in your approach if you're going to do something like this. Despite the fact that you probably feel right now that you have all the time in the world, that's still not a good excuse for wasting time. There are no excuses really for wasting time. It's an extremely valuable resource. So why not kill two birds with one stone if you're going to do some voluntary work? Try to find something which will satisfy your desire to do some good with something which will link to your career. Maybe something you're hoping to pursue in the future.
So, what kind of approach would you recommend we take?
You should start with your aims. Give yourself some time to sit down and ask yourself what you want to have achieved by the end of the year. Now, these achievements are, as I mentioned at the beginning, going to be different for everyone, and they don't have to be work-related. If there's something you've always wanted to do, and perhaps you need to be young and fit to be able to do it, like, say, climb a mountain, then this would be valid use of time. You would have a great achievement to put on your resume at the end of the year. And what you will have learned and the skills you have picked up not only from climbing the mountain, but from the time you spent preparing to climb it, will be transferable and serve you well in the future. But nor does your aim have to be so adventurous. If, for example, you really have no idea what to do with a year off, and you also have no idea what career you'd like it to have in the future, then perhaps the best solution would to simply just get away from it all and try to find yourself, understand who you are, and hopefully arrive at some conclusions as what you'd like to do with your future. If anyone were to do this, well, that would be time well spent.
So, sorry, could you tell me the difference between your last example and basically just chilling out for a year?
The difference is the very point I'm making. In my example, you have a very clear aim, not only in your mind, but hopefully written down somewhere to remind you of what you're trying to achieve. In my last example, you'd be expected to keep a weekly or even daily log of your progress. This is an essential component and will have a profound effect on what you manage to take away from whatever experiences you have. So you can see that even when your aim is not work or sport related, it still has structure and it is something that you monitor. That's very different from just taking every day as it comes and, say, going with the flow.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, now let me get you all a little more involved. I'd like
Undoubtedly,
to...
the printing press changed the world in the 13th century by spreading the written word. But the telephone was the first technology that made working together at a distance possible in real time. Telegraph and semaphore flags, you might argue, made that possible too. But you'll have to admit, the bandwidth was pretty low, and the bits per second transmitted were just that. Bits per second. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this, our first session on telecommuting. Today the focus is mainly on the history and briefly on how things are looking today. Let's make a start. It was back in 1831 that Michael Faraday proved that vibrations of metal could be converted to electrical impulses. 45 years later, around 1876, Alexander Graham Bell applied the discovery and was issued a patent for the telephone. The following year, he formed the Bell Telephone Company and installed the first city exchange in Hartford, Connecticut. 1878, the world's first telephone directory was published, very different from the massive paperbacks we have today. It was a single sheet of only 50 names. Yes, just names because numbers were not then in use. And that year, President Hayes installed the first telephone in the White House. The first outgoing call from there went to Alexander Graham Bell himself, who apparently had to be told to speak more slowly. It was then 6 years, 1883, before you could talk to someone in another city. New York and Boston were the first to be connected. In 1912, the Navy experimented with air-to-ground radio using Morse code, and in 1921, the Detroit Police Department began experimentation with one-way mobile voice service, so-called radio telephone communication. And in 1933, the New Jersey Police Department made it possible to call a police vehicle and expect an answer over the first two-way system. Moving on, 1946, a driver in St. Louis placed the first mobile telephone call, and in 2 years, wireless telephone services were available. At a high price, I should add, but in almost 100 cities. An engineer by the name of Ring, yes, really, at Bell Labs dreamed up the idea for cell phones, but in 1947 the technology to do it simply didn't exist. So when did the cellular phone start to take off? Well, it wasn't until 1973 when Martin Cooper of Motorola made the first cell phone call. Interestingly, to his rival Joe Engel of AT&T Bell Labs. And he did this using a phone about the size and weight of a brick. 10 years later, the first commercial cellular service was launched. Bell Labs picture phone was test marketed in the early 60s, a big hit at the Seattle World Fair, and commercial service for this started in Pittsburgh in 1970. This, however, turned out to be a resounding flop because of steep prices and poor picture quality. Still, it did suggest that the day would come when you could visually bring people together. High-end teleconference centres were built, and executives across the country and around the world could meet eye to eye, if not face to face. And it wasn't long before web-based conferencing systems allowed one-to-many presentations, albeit without any facility for interaction and exchange. Other systems designed to allow collaboration also came along, but were often hard to use because they weren't intuitive, designed for geeks by geeks. And in some cases they were more limited than the technology they tried to replicate. Online whiteboards, for example, cost tens of thousands of dollars, but had all the limitations of real whiteboards, and none of the advantages that could have been added, such as highlighting or presentation and markup of existing content. Meanwhile, computers and networks were evolved from centralized systems with dedicated terminals to distributed networks of personal computers. Mobile workers, otherwise known as road warriors, with laptop computers began to make hotel reservations based on the availability of internet access. The Marriott Hotel Group responded to the demand and now has over 100,000 wired rooms. And nowadays, even airlines are investigating airborne internet access, with Lufthansa and American leading the way. One reason telework is coming into its own is that all this and more is now available at more affordable prices and even free. Today, Apple ships their Macintosh computers with built-in webcams and free iChat software, for example, so people can video conference while sharing photos, documents and presentations. Google, some believe, is preparing to blanket the US with free Wi-Fi to make access to their click-through ads more ubiquitous. When sharing information from anywhere, it is as easy as meeting face-to-face. Telework will become the standard way of working, and we're going to look at the implications of this.